When I met Ben Holloway, I knew right away he wasn't like the rest. Most reporters I've dealt with were all smiles and recorders, chasing headlines that burned bright for a week before fading out like sparks in the wind. But Ben, he looked like a man who'd been chasing ghosts too long to be afraid of one. We met at this little diner off Route 68, the kind of place that hadn't changed since the 70s. The neon sign out front flickered, half dead, buzzing just loud enough to remind you the world was still turning. He was already there when I walked in, coffee in front of him, cigarette burning low, sleeves rolled up like he'd been waiting for a fight. The moment he saw me, that trademark journalist grin faltered. "Frank Sullivan," he said, half smiling, half staring, like he couldn't quite believe I was real. "Guess rumors of your death were exaggerated." I laughed, dry and tired. "Yeah," I said, sliding into the booth across from him. "Seems like dying's the only way to get people's attention these days." He chuckled, but his eyes stayed sharp, studying me like I was both the story and the secret. I told him everything: the surgery, the silence, the sale, the lies. He didn't interrupt once, just nodded, scribbled a few notes, and kept that same steady look. When I finished, he leaned back, exhaled slow, and said, "Frank, this isn't just theft. It's fraud, conspiracy, something bigger. You realize that, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, Ben, I realize it. I just didn't know who else would believe me." He showed me files he'd pulled down the Whitmores corporate deals, campaign donations, shell companies. They had their hands in everything from land development to banking. "These people don't just buy land," he said. "They buy silence." That line stuck with me. He promised to dig deeper, to help me get the truth out, but he warned me too. "If you're right, Frank, you're stepping into something that doesn't like to be seen." I told him I'd already been buried once. What's the worst they can do? Kill me again. That made him laugh. But I could see something shift in his eyes. Respect, maybe even fear. We shook hands, and he said he'd start making calls first thing in the morning. I left the diner that night, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not the loud, naive kind. The quiet kind. The kind that sits in your chest and waits. When I stepped outside, the air was cold and smelled like rain. The streets were empty except for that flickering neon sign behind me. I lit a cigarette, looked up at the dark sky, and exhaled smoke into the wind. For the first time since waking up in that hospital, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt alive, but somewhere deep down, a voice whispered that I'd just traded one grave for another. Ben called me the next afternoon, voice sharp, fast, the kind of tone that only comes when someone's chasing something dangerous and doesn't know it yet. "Frank," he said, "you're not gonna believe what I found." I was sitting at the motel desk, papers scattered like snow, coffee gone cold. My gut told me whatever he'd found wasn't good. "Hit me," I said. He took a breath. "That company, Whitmore Agricultural Holdings, it doesn't exist." I frowned. "What do you mean it doesn't exist?" "There's a damn sign on my land with that name on it." He gave this short, bitter laugh. "Yeah, well, on paper it's nothing. No employees, no office, no history. The LLC was formed in Delaware 2 days before the sale. You know what that means, right? I did. Shell company, no trail, no accountability. Just smoke. So who's behind it? I asked. That's the kicker, he said. The signature on the registration isn't a Whitmore. It's Madison Reed. For a second I thought I'd misheard him. Madison. My voice cracked. My son's fiancée, Madison. Ben didn't even hesitate. Yep. Filed and signed electronically from an IP address in Kansas City. Guess your boy and his girl were in this together from the start. I just sat there, staring at the motel wall like it might give me an answer. I remembered Madison's smile, soft, careful, the way she used to hold Trevor's hand at Sunday dinner. Picture perfect. I'd thought she was the best thing that ever happened to him. Turns out she was just another vulture dressed in perfume and pearls. My throat went dry. You sure? Positive, Ben said. And frank. That's not all. The Whitmores didn't buy the land directly. They funded the LLC. She was the front. Trevor was the signature. Clean setup, too clean for amateurs. I pressed a hand to my forehead, trying to breathe through the anger. So what you're saying, I muttered, is my son didn't just betray me, he partnered with them. Ben was quiet a moment. Yeah, looks that way. And if I had to guess, they promised him a cut. Maybe power, maybe prestige. Maybe just the thrill of being one of the big boys. Happens all the time. Small-town kid gets a taste of money and thinks he's bulletproof. His words burned, because he was right. I could almost hear Trevor's voice, that cocky tone he picked up after college, talking about modernizing the family business. I'd thought it was ambition. Turns out it was greed in a suit. Ben said he'd dig deeper. I've got a friend at the registrar's office, he said. She can pull the electronic filings. I'll call you tonight. Something about this feels off. Be careful, I told him. These people don't just buy land, Ben. They buy silence too. He laughed. That nervous kind of laugh that doesn't reach your eyes. Don't worry, Frank. I've danced with devils before. But I could hear it, a tremor under the confidence. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling he'd stepped into. Something even the devils didn't want to see. I went for a drive. Ended up on the old road leading to the farm. The moon was bright, cutting through clouds like a blade. When I got there, I parked far enough away to stay unseen. The land looked quiet. Too quiet. Then I saw them, silhouettes under the metal barn light. Trevor, Madison, and 2 men I didn't recognize, suits under their jackets, hands full of blueprints. They were pointing, laughing. I zoomed in with my phone, heart hammering. On one of the blueprints, bold as day, were the words Project Redwood, Phase 2. My stomach turned. They weren't done. They were expanding, profiting off my name, my blood, my grave. I left before they noticed me, hands shaking the whole drive back. When I got to the motel, my phone buzzed. A message from Ben. Got something big. Meeting source tomorrow morning. Call you after. And the next morning started quiet. Too quiet. I was up before the sun again, sitting by the window, watching the lights crawl across the empty parking lot. My mind kept circling back to Ben's last message. Got something big. Meeting source tomorrow morning. I should have called him right then. Should have told him to wait, to not go alone. But you don't think like that until it's too late. You tell yourself people like Ben know what they're doing. that they've danced with danger before and made it out fine. I tried to distract myself, made bad motel coffee, shuffled papers, rechecked my notes. But that feeling in my gut wouldn't leave. It was the same cold weight I'd felt the day I found out Trevor sold the farm. Like the air itself was holding its breath. By 10 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I called Ben. No answer. Tried again. Straight to voicemail. "Hey Ben," I said, trying to sound calm, "just checking in. Call me back." I waited an hour. Nothing. By noon, I was already on the highway toward Wichita. The road stretching flat and endless, every mile heavier than the last. I kept telling myself maybe his phone died. Maybe he lost service. All the excuses you make when you're scared to admit what you already know. Halfway there, I stopped for gas. Checked my messages. Still nothing. Then the radio crackled on with a news update. Local reporter injured in car accident outside Wichita. Authorities say foul play not suspected. ... My heart stopped. They didn't say his name. They didn't have to. I pulled over so fast, the tires screamed. Called the hospital listed in the report. The nurse hesitated before asking, "Are you family?" I lied. "Yeah, I'm his uncle." She sighed. "He's stable, sir. But he's not talking much. Says it wasn't an accident." When I got there, that smell hit me. Antiseptic. Sharp and metallic, like déjà vu from Switzerland. I found his room. Ben looked like hell. Arm in a sling. Cuts on his face. Eyes wide open and burning. "Frank," he rasped, "they knew." I sat beside him. "What do you mean, they knew?" He swallowed hard. The source was fake. It was a setup. Someone leaked that I was digging. I barely got out. My stomach dropped. "You think it was the Whitmores?" He shook his head. "No, not them. Someone closer." His hand trembled as he passed me a crumpled piece of paper. "Found this on my windshield after the crash. 3 words. Stop digging, ghost." I stared at it for a long time. Ghost. That word again. That's what people called me now. The man who came back from the dead. Whoever left that note knew exactly what they were saying. "Ben, you need to get out of town," I told him. But he shook his head. "No, Frank, they want you scared. You can't stop now. You've already made them nervous." He coughed, wincing. "But be careful. They're watching you too." I wanted to ask how he knew, but his eyes were already closing, heavy with painkillers and exhaustion. I sat there a long time, staring at that note, my reflection faint in the hospital window. I didn't feel fear, just a strange calm, the kind that comes when you realize you're too far in to turn back. When I finally walked out, the sky was turning dark. Thunder rolled somewhere far off, deep and slow, like the world itself was warning me. I lit a cigarette, looked at that note one more time, and said, "You want me to stop? Then you shouldn't have called me a ghost. Already. What's one more set of eyes trying to finish the job?" When I got back to the motel, the door to my room was cracked open. Just barely. My stomach dropped. I pulled it open slow, half expecting someone to be waiting inside. But the room was empty. At least it looked that way. My things were where I'd left them, but something was off. The folder with the land sale papers was gone. The laptop too. They hadn't taken the cash on the nightstand. Hadn't even touched the bag by the door. This wasn't a robbery. It was a warning. I stood there for a long minute. The rain still drumming outside, trying to calm my breathing. I checked the bathroom, the closet, the window, all clear. But the air felt wrong. Heavy. Like whoever had been there left part of themselves behind. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands pressed to my face. My head was spinning, but my thoughts were clear. They weren't just trying to scare me. They were telling me they could reach me anytime they wanted. My first instinct was to run, pack up, and disappear again. But that's what they wanted, and I was done running. I grabbed my phone, called Ben, but it went straight to voicemail again. I didn't leave a message this time. I just whispered, "They found me." Then I hung up and stared at the dark motel TV screen until my reflection blurred into the shadows. That's when I noticed something. A small folded piece of paper tucked under the door. My pulse spiked as I reached for it. 3 words again, written in the same jagged handwriting as before. "You're next, ghost." I didn't even flinch. I just laughed. This low, bitter sound that surprised even me. "Guess you boys don't like sharing secrets," I muttered. I burned the note in the sink, watched the paper curl and blacken until there was nothing left but ash. Then I looked in the mirror and said, "If you wanted me gone, you should have done it right the first time." I didn't sleep that night, just sat by the window, watching the rain turn into mist, replaying everything in my head. Somewhere out there, someone was pulling strings, Trevor. The Whitmores, maybe both. But one thing was certain now. The story Ben had started was no longer just a story. It was a confession that someone was willing to kill to keep quiet. Morning came slow, dragging its light across the motel room like it didn't want to be there either. I hadn't slept a damn second. My eyes burned, my coffee was cold, and every muscle in my body ached from sitting up all night waiting for a knock that never came. The world felt different now, heavier, quieter, like it was holding its breath for what came next. I looked out the window, and for the first time in years I didn't feel scared. I felt ready. I'd lost my land, my name, my peace, and now they wanted to take my truth too. But here's the thing about the dead. Once you've buried a man alive, there's not much left he's afraid of. I packed what little I had left. Just a notebook, some clothes, and a memory stick I'd hidden behind the dresser. The one with copies of every file I'd gathered before they broke into my room. They thought they'd wiped me clean, but they didn't know how stubborn I could be. I still had enough to burn them all down if I played it right. I left the motel key on the table, stepped out into the damp morning air, and breathed deep. The sky was pale gray, heavy with the kind of clouds that promise another storm. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from an unknown number. I hesitated before opening it. Just one line. Asterisk, he's not who you think he is. Asterisk, no sender, no signature. My heart skipped. It could have been about Trevor, or Ben, or someone I hadn't even met yet. Either way, it meant one thing. I wasn't done. Not even close. I drove out toward the edge of town, following the old dirt road that led past the mill. Every building, every sign, every damn mailbox felt like a piece of a puzzle I didn't understand yet. When I hit the highway, I called the only person I trusted left on this earth, a retired sheriff named Bill Carver. He'd been my father's friend once, a man who didn't scare easy. When he picked up, his voice was gruff but warm. Frank Sullivan. Hell, I thought I'd never hear that name again. I told him a little, not everything. Just enough to make him listen. The land, the sale, the threats, Ben's crash. He went quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "Frank, if you're right, this goes way higher than your boy or those Whitmore folks. You need to be careful who you trust." I told him I'd already learned that lesson. He sighed. "Meet me at the old train yard tonight. We'll talk off the record." Then he hung up. As the miles rolled under me, I thought about everything I'd lost, and everything they still thought I didn't know. The note, the break-in, the message, it all meant someone close was feeding them information. Maybe Ben had been set up from the start. Maybe Trevor wasn't even the one running the show anymore. The thought twisted in my gut. My own son might not just be a traitor, he might be a puppet. And whoever was pulling the strings wasn't finished with me. I drove faster, the sky darkening again, the wind picking up like it was carrying secrets. Somewhere behind me, I swear I saw those same headlights again, the ones from the night before. I didn't slow down, didn't flinch, just smiled to myself and muttered, "You want to follow me? Fine. Let's see how deep you're willing to dig." By the time I reached the train yard, the sun was gone and the world was wrapped in grey. I parked under an old rusted light and waited. Engine running, eyes on the rear-view mirror. The night was still, except for the low hum of the wind through the broken metal. Then, movement. A shadow stepped out from behind one of the old cars. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, heart pounding. The figure moved closer and slow, deliberate. For a moment, I thought it was Bill, but then the person stepped into the light, and it wasn't him. Sing Sing, next episode. Sing Sing, * Before I Died, episode 4. The Man Who Wasn't Bill *. Frank's world twists again when he discovers that even the people he thought he could trust aren't who they seem. ****. Subscribe now, ****, and turn on notifications, because the deeper this story goes, the darker it gets.